Welcome to the Service to Syndication Podcast, where we interview the biggest and most successful real estate entrepreneurs, investors, capital raisers in the world who have worn the uniform of this great country, those who provide services to our men and women in uniform, and other service-oriented professionals to provide you with the tool sets, the mindsets, and the skill sets to help you conquer your dreams and goals in real estate and to use this wealth creation vehicle so you can live a more successful, happy, and fulfilled life of generosity and prosperity. If what you desire is time, lifestyle, and financial freedom, you've come to the right place. We will bring to you the best real estate entrepreneurs who will give you the insights, the knowledge, experience, skills, so you can go out and crush it in whatever real estate asset class you desire. So grab a pencil and paper, sit back, and enjoy the ride on the Service to Syndication Podcast. Hello, my service men and women and other service providers. Welcome to another episode of the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Cedric Marlowe. I am a U.S. Navy vet. Here on the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast, we interview the most successful real estate entrepreneurs, investors, and capital raisers in the world, where most have donned the uniforms of our great country. We aim to provide the tool sets, the mindsets, and skill sets for you to achieve your personal and business goals while using real estate as a wealth creation vehicle to help you live a more successful, happy, and fun-filled life. I am super excited today because I have with me Mr. Joshua Massari, who is a top-notch midterm rental investor and long-term rental investor. But before I properly introduce our exciting guest to you, I want to ask a favor of you. Please, if you get some value out of this interview, if you get some type of insight, mindset shift, if you learn a new skill, receive inspiration or motivation to go out and take some progress in your life, please share this episode with some of your friends. Send it to someone you know who might be or could be interested in real estate. Share it on your wall, social media, share it on your wall, and help us spread our message while you help others. And for all of you who shared this episode, I want to say thank you. Again, everyone, I have with me Mr. Joshua Massari. He and his wife, they are the Broke Millionaires. They are a husband and wife real estate team who turned limited resources into a thriving multi-state portfolio through strategy, creativity, and long-term vision. They specialize in transforming underperforming properties into cash-flowing assets across several niches, including long-term rentals, midterm rentals, co-hosting, and multi-unit conversions. Masters of creative finance and tax-efficient ownership, they've built wealth using both personal and retirement funds while helping others maximize their own rental income. Through the Broke Millionaires podcast, they share transparent stories about building generational wealth, raising a family, and keeping it real, all to prove that you don't need to start rich to build real wealth. You need to start smart. All right, Joshua, first off, welcome, sir.
Thank you, thank you. That was a real hype. You hyped me up to talk about myself, man. I gotta live up to the hype now on that.
Absolutely, absolutely. We know you can do it. So, Joshua, before you became this very successful person I see in front of me, in about 2 to 3 minutes, give our listeners a little bit of your backstory, like where you grew up, how was your upbringing, and what in your past shifted your mindset into becoming the person you are today.
Yeah. Well, I didn't grow up with much. I definitely grew up in poverty, really. I grew up in the Northwest in a small town. You know, we didn't really have a lot of money growing up, and my parents didn't have any assets. It was always robbing Peter to pay Paul, just kind of scrounging to get by and put food on the table. And so I didn't really have any exposure to investing or really just saving or building wealth at all. But my dad was in real estate, so I did have some real estate exposure. So I always kind of had that background back of mind and had that knowledge and kind of knew the value of it, just never from the investing side. When I was in college, I went to Arizona State, and I was, coming out of college my senior year and wanted to make $100,000. I want to make $150,000, and I wanted to be rich, and that was all I cared about. And I was doing this internship, and I had one of the owners, I think it was his dad, so he's more of like a consultant to the company, but he was pretty involved. And he told me that my problem was that I just wanted to be rich, and I didn't understand money and didn't understand what wealth was. And I kind of blew it off. I'm like, whatever, what are you talking about? I just want to make money. And around that same time, my dad gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I think is where a lot of people start in real estate. And I read that book, and then it kind of clicked, and I was like, oh, he's right. I don't know what I'm talking about. And then that was kind of my mindset shift on what it meant to be rich versus building wealth and understanding money. And so that was kind of like my a pivotal point. At that point, I just dove in. I went to the library, started ripping CDs back when we had CDs and CD-ROM. I'd go to the library, rip all these books, and go home and listen to them, and driving around working. And I just really like dove into investing and money and real estate, and just absorbed as much as I could. So it was really all self-taught just from reading books. But coming out of college, I came to California and ended up buying my first property, and that, appreciation upswing. This was in 2008 when I graduated. So everything was down, market was down.
Right.
That was my first real big investment. I paid $400,000 for this property. It's now worth more than three times that. And so I've used that and leveraged that property to buy other properties. But that was kind of my mind, that coming out of college, I would say that was kind of what shifted into this whole investor mindset and really trying to build wealth.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. But I will say that that purple book
Yeah.
has changed the lives of so many people,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure one of these days, hopefully I'll get to interview Robert Kiyosaki and just ask him, did he ever have any idea what that book would do to so many people? Because I mean, he probably still does not realize just how important that book has been to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hear so many people on podcasts, people that we interview, like that's the book that changed it for them. It's a simple book and a simple concept, but it's life transforming. If somebody hasn't read it, they need to read it. Like no matter how old that book is, like the fundamentals don't change, and it's really a good baseline and foundation for how money works.
100%. So, Joshua, you describe your journey as one built on consistency, strategy, and understanding how to make each property perform. Can you unpack what that really means in practical terms for investors just starting out?
Yeah. So I think that we've seen a pretty big shift in real estate in the last, several years. So over the last decade, I remember 10, 15 years ago, you could buy a property in the Midwest or in the South or anywhere that was a good, you get the 2% rule. Remember the 2% rule?
Yeah.
As long as you're renting it for 2% of what you paid for it, you'd be cash flowing, you're building wealth, and you're doing good. That doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't. With the way property values have gone up, taxes, insurance, interest rates, your carrying costs, it just doesn't work anymore. So it doesn't make sense to buy a property and make a couple $100 a month, and especially if it's a market that's not appreciating a lot. So I think the whole real estate has really, really shifted. So what we've done to really make it make sense is we have moved into midterm rentals, which is kind of a new sector of rental properties. We've kind of gone away from we're still doing long term, but we're moving more to the midterm because there's a lot of demand, and we're really carving out a niche for our market on being able to offer a product that there's not a lot of supply of, but still, at least in our market is outpaced by demand. And for those that don't know what midterm rentals is, it's kind of like between a long-term and a short-term rental. So we take these properties, we completely renovate them. And so by renovating them, we're gutting them, we're completely redoing it. So it's a brand new home when we're done. We're pushing appreciation on the asset itself. So that's where we're getting the value. We're pushing our equity up. I call equity appreciation, like when you're doing that, I call it silent income, because you're not paying taxes on it, but it's really, you're adding it's essentially income, because you can take a property, completely renovate it and make a decent amount of money in 1 year. But if you don't sell it, you don't have to take it as income. So we don't ever sell. We just take the equity out and roll it into the next property. But what we've been able to do with these midterm rentals, instead of doing the long-term method, we are able to get usually about 1.5 to 2 times the rent what a long-term rental would go for. And we are having to furnish it, and we do provide utilities. So all utilities are paid. So there are some expenses that we cover similar to a short-term rental. But we're getting people that come in for, yeah, usually 2 to 3 months is our average stay. Sometimes they'll say 6, 8, sometimes even a year.
Mhm.
And there's different types of placements that we're putting in these homes, but insurance is a big one. So somebody has a flood or a fire, insurance companies have to pay for them to live somewhere. So they can put them in a hotel, a comparable hotel, or they can rent one of these furnished midterm rental properties that are more comfortable for the family, but also cheaper for the insurance company. So we've kind of found this little mid ground where we're able to, capitalize on this market and cash flow these properties that, especially in California, like you can't cash flow properties long term at all. It's been that way for a long time, but we're able to actually cash flow these properties by doing this midterm rental strategy. So that's kind of where we've gone with our whole investing.
Okay, okay. So one thing there with the midterm rental, thank you for at least giving that little bit of information in there where you were talking about having people who maybe had a fire or something like that, displacement for whatever reason, that they were able to, utilize their insurance, to pay for their time, their stay in your midterm rental. Because in my mind, I know like a lot of times with the midterm rentals, there might be traveling nurses and, things like that, or people who are working in a certain place for a period of time that come in and rent, these midterm rental properties for a period of time. Yeah, thank you for that. And also for the people who may be new, maybe this is their first time hearing my podcast or hearing anything about real estate. Can you define a little bit the short-term rental and long-term rental?
Yeah, so it varies a little bit by market, but typically a short-term rental is going to be your Airbnb vacation rental. You're going for a week or a weekend, but it's kind of by jurisdiction. So most cities consider a short-term rental less than 30 days, and then 30 days or more automatically becomes a long-term rental in by city code. Even though we call it midterm because we're not doing a full 12-month lease, but that gets around a lot of like local taxes for like hotel taxes and things like that. That stuff is going to apply to that 30-day or less stay. So as soon as you do 30 days or more, you're getting around that. Also in California, most cities around here have outlawed short-term rentals. You can't even do that, period. And that was kind of how we originally got into it because we didn't have a choice if we wanted to do a furnished rental. So they define short-term rentals as 30 days or less. So if you're going, or actually under 30 days or more, at that point they consider it a long-term rental, and so you get around, you're not doing a short-term rental anymore. You also don't have to have licenses and permits, because a lot of the cities that still allow that, a lot of the beach cities around here, you
Hmm.
have to have a permit to do that. Then you have to have a business license, and there's a lot of things that go into that. You got to collect city taxes and all that, all the hotel taxes, and you get around all that by doing this 30-day or more rental.
I like that. There's always a way to get around it,
Always a
or,
way.
or
There's
to
always a
work through
loophole.
it, to work through it, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah, that's the term we'll use.
there you go.
Yeah. So now, how did you go from broke to building a real estate portfolio across multiple states? And what were the biggest mindset shifts along the way?
Well, I will say I'm still broke, but that's a term that I think I need to define, especially for the name of our podcast, because we are the broke millionaires. But we've got, we're multimillionaires in terms of our assets and on paper, but cash broke is what I like to say. We roll all of our money into the next deal, so we're always broke. But I will say, like, I didn't come from broke. I came from poor. I came from a family that just didn't have anything, right? So there's a difference between broke and poor. Broke is just a temporary state of being. It's a cash flow issue. I think of poor as being like broke all the time, right? So, um, I think for me, like coming from my upbringing, I've always had a good entrepreneurial, like my dad was an entrepreneur, and he had the real estate backing. So I've always kind of had that in my mind and always had that drive. It was just the wealth building and being able to make money work for me that I didn't have. And that's what I learned. And I think once I started investing a little bit and seeing the benefits of that, it just kind of like it starts to snowball. You get excited and you start putting more towards that, and you just keep building and building. And as you're staying consistent with that, it just starts to build and build and build. Like one of the things I did was when I started a company about 14, no, 10 years ago, I started my own company. I have a print company. So that's like my day job. I'm a printer. Um, I took my 401k that I was with my previous company and I rolled it over into a solo 401k. And by doing that, I was able to put more money into my 401k. And at the time, this was like 2017. I think the max allowed that time was around 20,000 for like a standard 401k. But I was able to put like almost three times that by doing the solo 401k strategy. So I started putting a lot of money, a lot of the company profit into my 401k to just build up more cash to be able to invest. I started buying properties in the South, mostly South Carolina, and I bought at a time when there was still appreciation happening, and then when I sold those off, I had a lot of equity built up, and so I took a 401k that was $80,000. I think this was probably about 8 years ago now that I rolled that over. Now it's almost $1 million. So just by being consistent with that, putting it into real estate, not just relying on the market, and actually putting it into assets that I controlled and I could renovate and push appreciation, I was able to exponentially grow that compared to what you would normally see in the market.
Okay. Now, what made you go to South Carolina? What attracted you to that state?
It was nothing to do with South Carolina, honestly. I was looking for out of state being in California, you need a lot of money, you need a lot of capital to especially. So I was looking at investing through the 401k, and
Okay.
you have to either buy all cash or the leverage that you can do is very limited. So you can usually get like 60% LTV. So you got to have 40% down. In California, that's a lot of money. A fixer upper is $1 million. You got to have $400,000 to start, and it just wasn't going to happen. So
Wow.
I started looking out of state, like where can I buy properties, some single family homes that with the money that I had, and kind of get started that way. And I landed on South Carolina because there was a girl I went to high school with who had her family had moved to South Carolina after graduation, and I hadn't talked to her, like this is like 10 years, 10, 15 years after graduation. Got connected to her on Facebook because I saw that she was a realtor in the area and also doing some investing and had some rental properties. And so I finally was able to reconnect with her, and she was my boots on the ground. She started finding properties for me and like calling me like, "Hey, I've got a property. I'm not going to buy this one because I'm in this project. Are you interested?" We actually partnered up. We formed an LLC and we started buying properties together as well. So that was really a really good connection for me. It was really just a connection. It wasn't about South Carolina at all. It was just I had a connection there to be able to. I didn't want to be flying. I mean, these properties were $25,000. I didn't want to be flying to South Carolina, spending all this money going back and forth on a $25,000 property. It just didn't
Right.
make sense. I've never been to South Carolina. Actually, I've owned dozens of properties and never even been there at this point.
Oh, wow. See, it in real estate, for those that are listening, it's a relationship business. It's total relationship business. He just said he's never been to South Carolina and has owned dozens of properties here. You have to make relationships in this business because you never know how far it's gonna take you and the things that it can do for you and your family. And this is proof right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So, Joshua, what are the financial or operational pros and cons of midterm rentals compared to traditional long-term rentals?
Well, a pro is that you're getting a lot more money. We typically see about 1.5 to 2 times what a long-term rent is going to pull for that market. And this is in the other markets. So we do this here in California. We also do this in Texas. We've got an apartment building in Texas that we also have some midterm rentals there. And we're doing that out of state. It's a little more difficult with getting SOPs and getting people in place, but we do it there as well. But I just the income that you're getting, most long-term rents these days just don't pencil out, especially with carrying costs and what insurance has done over the last couple of years. So you're able to get a little more creative on structuring your deal and still be able to cash flow. Even we look at high appreciation or high appreciating assets, at least on the West Coast,
Mhm.
but we still want to make sure it cash flows, and we can't do that with what long-term rents are in our area. So the midterm rental strategy is a way to cover those carrying costs while we're pushing that appreciation and be able to make it pencil out. So I would say a pro is just the extra income that you can get and not have to be in the short-term rental strategy, because I've never done short-term rentals, but I have no desire to do that. I don't want to deal with turnovers once or twice a week and just constant like people coming in and out. That just sounds like a lot of work to me. We got, I think our average stay is about, I want to say it's 10 weeks. It's like 2.5 months is our average stay. So we're typically turning over a property 4 to 6 times a year. That's not bad. That's pretty manageable. So that's another con or another pro of the midterm versus a short term is that it's really not a lot of work in terms of you still have to set it up like a short term, get it all furnished and on the front end. But once it's up and running, there's really not a lot to do. And we don't have once somebody moves in, this is somebody's home. They tend to be pretty like self-sufficient when they're there. Like they're not calling us for supplies and toilet paper and things like that. Like a short-term rental might get more of those calls. It's they kind of move in, they've got the initial supplies, and then they're getting their own stuff after that because this is their home, and it's really a low maintenance type of guest that we have in there. So cons are just gonna be your startup cost. It's like a short-term rental. You buy a property, you renovate it, and we do renovate our properties to be kind of top end. We charge a lot for our properties. We're kind of on the high end of the market, but we have a really good product that is a high-end product. So we stand out compared to the competition, and that's part of why we do so well and why we have very little vacancy. So we've been able to keep our properties full without those vacant days because vacancy can kill you in that type of strategy. The other nice thing about midterm is, you don't have to worry about you got your weekends filled, but you have all the vacant days during the week like you would normally have in a short-term rental. Like we got somebody in there solid for 3 months. So it's like you have no vacant days for 3 months. And then maybe you have like a week between your turnovers before you get the next guest in there, but then that's it. And you're good for another 3 months. But I think the biggest con is just the setup cost. Like that's a lot of people that we coach and walk through this with them is you've got to do all the furniture and have everything all set up. It's not just the furniture, it's the plates, it's the silverware, it's everything. So it can get a little overwhelming for people that haven't gone through that before. When you move into a house, you don't typically buy everything at once. You get your furniture, you get your bed, you get your main stuff, and then you're kind of buying stuff as you go. Okay, let's get this and let's get that. And you don't just say like, okay, let's just do this all on day one. But in this scenario, you do it all day one. So it is a big upfront expense that's probably the biggest, I would say, surprise for people when they're setting up these properties. We actually do it a little differently.
Okay.
We a lot of times do a live-in renovation. We'll buy a property and we'll live in it while we're going through renovations. So we'll take it down to the studs and then we'll put a kitchen in, get a bathroom, get it. We usually have the bathroom. I say that, but the last house, our bathroom wasn't ready and we had to move in and we were showering on the backyard with one of those little camping things hanging from the rafters. So yeah, usually it's got a shower. But we'll live in these properties as we're finishing up renovations. I do a lot of the work, a lot of the finishing work myself, and I GC these properties. I manage everything myself. So I'm
Okay.
pretty involved in them. So it kind of helps be in there, but we have actually done that while we're living in there and we go through that. So one, we're not having to pay for rent somewhere or mortgage and then not, cash flowing on this property for, sometimes these can take a year to complete these bigger properties. But we'll kind of buy stuff while we're there, knowing we're going to leave it. So we'll get the furniture that we're going to have there and we'll use it and we'll use the dishes and everything while we're there. And then we'll just leave everything. So we kind of do it as we go. So it's not
Mhm.
just all at once.
Oh, I like that concept. Like you say, basically a live-in midterm, until you
Yeah.
get the finished product. A question that popped in my head while you were talking about the midterm is, are any of your properties multi-tenanted properties, meaning more than one midterm renter in the property at the same time?
So yes and no. So we don't do like what is it, pad split, if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
We don't
More and
do
more.
yeah. So some people do like the pad split model, and what that is you're basically renting a room. We don't do that. We only rent entire homes, but we
Okay.
do have properties where we have gotten really creative and split up into multiple units. For example, we have a large property that we bought. It had an ADU in the back already existing, and then it was total square footage was it was like 3,300 square feet. What we did with that property is we turned it into 4 midterm rental units. So we have a main house that's a 3 bedroom, and then we have 3 studios. There was the ADU that was in the back, and then there's another, there was like this big bedroom above the garage. We used communicating doors, like at a hotel where they have a door with a deadbolt that you close
Oh,
both
yes.
sides and it's got
Yeah.
like soundproof insulation in between. So we'll do that. So it's not like a technical like unit, but we lock it off and then we put like a little they all have their own laundry in units and it's got like a little kitchenette. So it's set up like a fully functioning unit with its own little kitchenette and everything and own bathroom. There was another one. It was the original master bedroom that had a side entry. We did the same thing with that. And so we've been able to separate out the same property and rent it as 4 midterm rental units and done very, very well. So it helps with when there is turnover, even though like the main house may be empty for a week, we've all these other properties that are all the other units that are still bringing in income. So we never really have a full lapse in income. And we've been able to, we probably get about 2.5 times what that property would rent for on a long-term rental because we're doing that. So even at the midterm, if we rented the whole property as a midterm rental as one unit, it wouldn't get what we're getting because these smaller units there's a lot of demand for them. So we're able
Hmm.
to charge a premium on those. And those are more like the traveling nurses, like you mentioned earlier. That's
Yeah.
what we'll see, like staying that they'll come in there for their 90-day contracts. We get a lot of those, a lot of clinical rotations, things like that. But we have a ton of demand. If I could just build a building with all these little studios, I would do that because it would be way more profitable. Like I've known some people have kind of gone down that road, but there's just so much demand, at least in our area, for that. So that's how we've been able to create multiple units with one property, but everyone has their own home. So it's still like you're renting the entire place.
Okay, gotcha. So now, for someone considering multi-unit conversions, what are the most common mistakes new investors make when trying to repurpose a property for multiple tenants? Matter of fact, let me turn that around. What was one of the mistakes that you guys made that you've now corrected when you started the kind of like multi-tenanted type properties?
I don't know that I really have a good answer as for in terms of what we did for mistakes because I think we did a really good job. Not to
Okay.
toot
Okay.
my own horn, but we did a really good job with that, and other people have started to like kind of copy that model. But I will say I do have another investor locally that I know that did make a mistake, and I'll tell you like what that is so people don't make that mistake. This investor took a duplex and redeveloped the whole property. It was this whole building, so it was basically I think it was 2 duplexes, and he was able to turn it into 31 rental units
Whoa.
by basically, I think it was it was like a set up like a townhome. So it was a 3-story duplex, and he had 2 of these. And what he did was made basically like co-living, but also like they had their own door, like each room had its own ensuite. So they had their own bathroom, shower, and everything, and they had a room that would go. You would have you got like a keypad to get into your room, kind of like a maybe like a hotel, I guess. So you got your own hotel room basically with your own bathroom. But then they had the common areas like the kitchen area, the living room area, and then it was like a workspace area on each level, and those
Okay.
were all common areas. And the laundry was common. There might have been a laundry on like a couple different floors, but he was doing this kind of at the same time that we were doing ours, and it was really struggling to get them rented. And I think part of the problem, and I think he's doing better now. We kind of coached him through that, and he started picking up. But I think part of the problem is that these weren't individual like private spaces. You had your own room and your own bathroom, yes, but you still had to share the kitchen, you had to share the laundry, you had to share the couch on the living room, you had to share the TV. Like there was still, it wasn't private. It was kind of like I would say a hybrid pad split situation. So I would say if somebody's redeveloping a property with that in mind, try to make every space as private as possible with all the amenities that they need. Someone's going to be happier with a small kitchen that's private and they're the only ones that use it versus a really big, nice kitchen that 15 other people are using. So, because then you got, some people are going to be messy and some people are going to, be using it when you need it. And I think that was probably like if I would have had been involved in that project, I probably would have said we need to make each space more individualized and more private and self-sustaining. So a smaller little kitchenette with a small laundry in each one, I think he would have been able to rent it out for more. I think he'd have a lot
Right.
more demand and he would be able to rent it out for more had he gone that route. So that's what I would caution people is just don't try to get as many doors as you can or as many like beds. Think about the experience for the people. You're going to be able to get a lot higher rent if you have it more private.
I like it. So now, how does co-hosting differ from property management, and what makes it appealing for those that may not own real estate yet?
Yeah, so co-hosting I think is kind of a newer thing. This is both short-term and midterm, but I think it's become more popular with midterm.
Mhm.
You hear a lot of people like arbitraging short-term rentals. Like you don't even have to own your real estate, just go rent it from somebody, a long-term
Yes.
landlord, and then turn around and then arbitrage and basically in a sense sublease it out on your short-term strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that strategy. I mean, for some people have done very well with it, so I'm not gonna like knock it. But for me, that's a lot of liability and a lot of risk and a lot of relying on demand and Airbnb and whatnot. But you're also relying on city codes. Like in California, it's super like that's like very dangerous to do because the cities here are like all these cities are dropping like flies on the ability to be able to do short-term rentals. So all these people that were arbitraging all of a sudden are like, I'm locked in on this lease. I can't do this anymore because that city just shut me down. Like, what do I do? I've got, I'm on the hook for this property. So I think arbitraging is going, and a whole short-term rental model it's so oversaturated right now that a lot of people just aren't making it, and so they're just getting out of it. So with co-hosting, what we do, so we're not a property management company. There's some definitely differences there. We're not able to do things like we can't collect rent and we can't pay for, maintenance and things like that. The owners have to do all that. We're just basically helping walk through the process and helping do the marketing. We're basically running the like a as if we're the owners, but we just don't handle the money and there's some things that we can't do. But it's basically replacing the arbitrage model. If you don't have properties or money to buy a property and you want to get into this, you can be a co-host on a midterm or even a short-term property and not have to rent the property in an arbitrage model. So basically, the way it works is, let's say if it's on Airbnb, an owner will put their property on Airbnb and then they'll find a co-host and you get added to their account on that listing. So when people, inquire about the property, you can do everything the owner can. You can, reply to them, set up the offers, manage the calendar. Like you manage the whole listing, but
Yeah.
the listing is in the owner's name. So you're not a property management company because a property management company will actually set that up on their own account. Whereas in this case, the owner has to be the listing owner and it's just adding you as essentially a helper to the listing. And Airbnb has got this. They have a whole co-hosting platform. They've made it very, very easy to add co-hosts, and they do the payouts. So you negotiate what your payout is going to be, and then the Airbnb, when a listing gets or when a reservation gets paid out, they give the co-host their percentage and then the owner their percentage. So they make it very easy to manage that, and you're not having to invoice them and chase money from them because it's all paid on the front end from Airbnb.
Okay. All right. I thought I knew what co-hosting was. I had literally no
It's
idea that this thing even existed. So
okay.
now you're added on to my property, and so you basically manage it so that I'm more hands off. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. Yeah. So some owners like to be more involved and they want to see how to do it and learn the process. So there's a lot of things that we do. So our full service program, we do, we'll help get the whole property set up and get it all optimized so that it stands out against all the other properties in the area. We'll do all the marketing. So we do additional marketing outside of Airbnb that, bringing in like the insurance leads and things like that. We manage all the Airbnb requests. And so we'll get people into the property. We'll handle any requests or issues they have. We'll do the turnovers. We've got our cleaning crew and our program that we've got for all the turnovers. So we handle everything. So it's pretty hands off for the owners. Some owners want to be more involved. Maybe they just want, a year to kind of have their hand held through the process and learn how to operate and then do this on their own and maybe scale up down the road. So we do a 1 year commitment on our end, but then after that they're free to go if they want to do it on their own. But they can be either fully in because they're on the listing, so they see all the messages. The owner's still going to see all the messages and everything, so they're still just as involved as if it was being, if it was their own property. They're just not really having to make the decisions and worry about all the day-to-day operations. So it's a fairly new thing. Airbnb just rolled out their co-host platform last year. I think it was almost, yeah, right at a year ago. So it's a pretty new thing in the market. But I mean, we have about a dozen properties in our local market that we co-host. But we've got somebody that's coming on our show actually. She's in Los Angeles. This girl, she's a rock star. She's got 100 co-hosted properties. Doesn't own any properties. She's co-hosting 100 properties and collecting on all of these, and doesn't have any arbitrage leases. Doesn't own anything, and is just killing it.
Joshua, you've blown my mind today. Like I'm really ready to just cancel, finish off this podcast. So many freaking questions I have. Man, I'm blown away. I really am. Never knew this thing existed. I watched the verbal commercials or Airbnb, and I hear co-hosting. I hear that on a commercial. Had no idea that this thing
It's
freaking
like I said,
exists.
it's new and it's becoming it's replacing the arbitrage model because now you can go to somebody that instead of having to get a lease with that owner, you can say, "Hey, why don't you list us on Airbnb? I'll just come in and I'll co-host and I'll manage everything for you, and you'll get a higher rent than you would if I was renting it on arbitrage because you're going to get the higher rents,
Right.
and then you're getting your cut, and you have no like you're not having to commit to anything." So I will say, like some people, and I caution owners, like if you're going to have a co-host, make sure that they know what they're doing because there are just like anything else. There's people like trying to make a quick buck and they see, oh, co-hosting, I'm going to go co-host because I don't have to buy a property. I don't have to sign a lease. It's no risk to me. And I can just be a co-host, make money. Well, if you're not any good, you're probably not going to last very long. But I always caution owners, like make sure that they've got properties already that they either own or that they've got a good portfolio of properties that they're already co-hosting to make sure that they know what they're doing and they're going to actually operate because you also don't want to get like on Airbnb and VRBO, you don't want to get bad reviews because that'll just kill your listing. So you want somebody that is already like in it, knows what they're doing, has been doing it for a while, they're experienced. So you do have to be careful, getting into it with, if you have a property and you're trying to bring a co-host on, you do have to be careful with that. But yeah, it's a pretty good pro. I mean, we've only been co-hosting for not even 6 months now, and it's, we're close to a seven figure or not seven figure, close to a six-figure business just on this co-hosting thing that we never even planned on doing. We were just doing this ourselves, and Airbnb actually reached out to us about it and told us what the co-hosting was. And I was like, yeah, sure, put us on the platform. We started getting leads from people because all these cities are shutting down short term and now they got to go to midterm and they don't know what to do because it's a
Right.
whole different animal in terms of the marketing. And so we had that figured out already. So that's kind of where our niche is just that we only do the midterm rental co-hosting, but we've figured it out. And so, people are putting their properties in service and we're filling their properties before they even are ready, before they even move out, really. So,
Wow.
so it's been really good for us. Yeah, we just stumbled on this not that long ago, but it's been really good to us.
I am now a co-host.
There you go.
So you've mentioned using creative financing, trust structures, and tax efficient ownership. Can you walk us through a real life example of how one of these strategies worked in your portfolio?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of one that we recently did. This was about 2 years ago. We were getting ready. So we buy properties, we renovate them, push appreciation, and then we'll tap into them with a HELOC or some other product to be able to pull the money out and roll it over into the next project. And we were looking. This was 2023. Interest rates were higher, and we were trying to find another property. And in California, there's not a lot of property. There's obviously a supply demand, supply issue here. So finding properties is hard. And when there is a property that's got that deferred maintenance and is a good deal, there's 50 investors that are all cash buyers trying to buy this so they can flip it. So we ended up finding a property in a neighborhood that we liked that was listed on Zillow. It wasn't on the MLS. It was on Zillow, and it was for sale by owner. And so we're like, oh, this is interesting. I don't know how we missed this. And so we called the number, and the number wasn't even. It was like disconnected. It didn't go through. I'm like, oh, well, maybe it's just one of those, somebody scamming or whatever. But using PropStream, I was able to find that the registered owner was actually in Florida. And so I was like, all right, well, let's, did a skip trace, got a phone number. I think my wife was the one that reached out and actually made contact with the real, it was real deal. And they apparently put their number in the listing wrong. So I don't know how they were getting any offers at all, but we went and looked at the house, and it had a flood. So it was in a trust, and these were the kids that were looking to sell it. And their mother had passed a few years before that, and they kept the house as like a California crash pad. So when they came to California, I think it was a sister that lived here and the brother that lived in Florida. So it was kind of a crash pad for the family when they would come to town. But they recently had a pipe burst in one of the bathrooms. It was some flood situation, and so half the house was demoed. There was upstairs, two or three bedrooms upstairs, half the bedrooms downstairs, and like literally half the house was just, they'd gone through the water. Like I guess the whole thing had flooded. It was like water pouring out of the front door. So they were kind of in a situation where they knew what they wanted for the property. They had a dollar in mind. And if they had a realtor sell it, it was going to be, $100,000 in commissions, and that wasn't going to work. And then they're like, well, you got to increase the price to make up for it. And then it was like pushing it out of the realm of most investors for a cash deal. So they needed a special buyer. And then we came in there, we were that special buyer. Um, we were working a deal with a hard money lender. We were going to acquire it, and then they were going to do the construction loan and do everything. And it was just getting with interest rates. And then halfway through the whole process, the lender changed their terms
Yeah.
on the amount that they were going to do. I don't remember what it was. We're like, oh, now we need another 10% down. And I was cross collateralizing a property. So we had cash with a cross collateralization. So we were already putting like, it was a, I want to say like 30% down or something. So between not just all cash, but between that and the cross collateralized property. And then they changed on what they wanted on the LTV. And it was just like, this is not making sense. This is not penciling anymore. So I went to the owners and I said, hey, like, we really want this property and we want to make this happen, but this is just getting to be too much. It also needed a roof that came out in the home inspection. And so it was like, now we need a roof. We didn't know about that. And so I said, look, we're interested in it, but the financing is not going to make sense. And I threw this out there and I said, would you be willing to sell our to sell our finance to us? And it was like dead silent on the other side. I was like, did I just upset them? Like, it was just, and I didn't say anything. It was just like, it was silence from both of us. It was very awkward. And the seller said, You know what? Maybe." And he said, "Well, how much would you be looking to put down?" And I said, "Hey, you're the bank. You tell me." And he said, "Well, I wouldn't do it for less than 10%." And
Oh my
I was
goodness.
putting 30% down on the other one. I'm like, yeah, I can make that work. And that was about what I was doing cash. I was doing about 10% cash. So I had the cash, I was cross collateralizing on the 30%, but I still had the 10% cash. So I was like, yeah, that works. And he said, "Well, what interest rate?" And I'm like, "You tell me, you're the bank." I'm like, "We can look at whatever interest rates are right now." And he's like, "Well, let me talk to my sister. I'll get back to you." And they called me back 2 days later, and I didn't hear from like two. It was like maybe 2 or 3 days. I'm like, "Nah, they're not going to do this." And then he called me and he said, "You know what? Talk to my sister. We're in. We'll do it." And then they wanted to do a 5 or 6% interest only balloon. Rates at the time were 7.5%, 7 to 7.5. I was like, "Let's do it." So we did it. We no realtors, no origination fee, no nothing. So it was a 1.2. So we ended up paying, I think our offer, I think we offered I don't know, we were offering like 15,000 less than what they're asking, or I don't remember. No, maybe it was, I don't remember what it was. But I said, "Hey, we'll pay your full asking," which was 1.25. I was like, "We'll pay full asking if you finance it." So there was a little more meat on it for them, and for us, it's with all the origination fees and all the extra interest, it was well worth it. So we closed on it. We closed on it, and that was the latest project. We just finished permitting on that in June of this year, and it was a full. I mean, we ripped everything out, new plumbing, new electrical, new everything, and that turned out beautiful. I mean, it's a midterm rental now. We rent that for 13,500 a month, and we've got a waiting list to get into that. So,
Wow.
it's now worth about right around 2 million, maybe a little more than 2 million on the comps. So we did pretty good on that.
Yeah, big time. I was going to ask you about a creative financing deal that you were proud of. That right there.
That's probably
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
probably
that definitely does it.
yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier a little bit about the solo 401k, but now can you go a little bit further into it? Like, how does using a solo 401k to invest in real estate differ from traditional investing, and what do new investors really need to know before trying it?
So I wouldn't say it's any different than buying real estate outside of a 401k. There are some things that you need to know, like for example, like the loans that they will do loans to 401ks, and a self-directed IRA is the same thing. So self-directed IRA and 401k, for people that aren't familiar, those are pretty much the same product. So you don't have to own with a solo 401k, you have to own a company and be able to sponsor the 401k. With a self-directed IRA, anybody can do that. There's a few like nuances and a few small differences, but the overall concept is the same. So what we do is we put all of our, everything that's in the 401k, like the 401k will purchase an asset. So it'll buy a property. All the rents come back into the 401k. So it's almost like, buying a stock, and the dividends from the stock go back into your 401k and it grows. Ours are the rents that are coming back in. And then the equity for that property, when we sell that, all that equity comes back into the 401k, and it's all tax sheltered. So whether you do a traditional or a Roth setup, it's the same as if a regular 401k. It's the same rules. So you're able to either grow that tax deferred or pay the taxes on the front end, and then you pull it out tax free when you're in retirement. But we've been able to, we bought and sold several properties that way. and we own a 14 unit apartment building in Texas with the 401k.
Okay. All right. So again, you've worked with a wide range of tenants across different rental types. Can you share a memorable story about renting to a client that taught you something unexpected?
I mean, I've got like horror. We've got the story. We've got all of them, right? We've got the horror stories that you go in there and it's just like, who were these people? And we've had some really good experiences with both long term and the midterm. Midterm rentals kind of fun because we get some different types of people that are coming in for different reasons, right? Because it's still like a short term thing, but they're there for a little longer. So we've had our properties, we've hosted like celebrities that were in town for usually it's like a medical thing or something, but they needed
Okay.
a place for a month or two for some reason. So we've had some big celebrities that we've had. We've had Team USA. We had a couple of the volleyball guys right
Oh,
before they went to
wow.
Paris. So they were practicing in Orange County, and that's where the team practices every year. And so they were staying in our home before they went to Paris. So it's kind of cool to see these guys and get to know them like face to face, and then you see them the next month in Paris, taking home. I think they took. I don't know if I think it was the bronze, but yeah, they winning the
Okay.
medal. So it's just kind of cool seeing that. Or,
Yeah.
and on social media, they're doing like they're packing for Paris and like this is what I'm packing, and it's like, oh, that's our like inside of our house. That was our bed. We used to live in that bedroom. That was our master bedroom. So it's kind of cool, kind of fun seeing that. When you have those type of interactions with people that are renting a home from you now and putting it out there, it's just that's kind of fun. I think that was probably the most fun experience we've had with our whole rentals that we do.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Yeah, just to see your property and as they're chronicling this, documenting it and like, okay, yeah, that's my place right there, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and you got like they got all these followers, and it's just kind of like, oh yeah, and we do. Have you heard of Peer Space? Do you know what that is?
No.
So I'll just throw this out there as one more strategy we do. So we do the midterm rental on these properties, and what we'll do is whenever we have gaps, so we don't have a lot of gaps, but like sometimes we'll have like a week or two in between bookings, and we can't rent it because if it's only 2 weeks, that's 14 days. We can't take a booking that's less than 30 days because now we're breaking the law, and then we're like the neighbors around here, they will shut you down so fast for that too. So what we do
Okay.
to capitalize on those gaps is we do two things. One, Peer Space, which is basically it's for people that need to rent a property for an event or like commercials and stuff. So we'll have companies that need because our properties are renovated pretty nicely. So they'll look for properties to do a commercial for whatever it may be, dog food or mattresses or some home good or something. And so they look for actual properties. Most of these are done in homes, not in a studio. So they'll
Oh,
rent a home for a day or maybe 2-3 days if they're doing commercials and it's a longer shoot. And so we'll be able to capitalize on the property and still generate income on those vacant days that we have. So we have like, for example, there's been like some Bravo shows that, use the outsides of our properties as they're somebody's house.
yes.
But they'll use that. So it's kind of cool because then we see what my wife's watching her Bravo shows and it's like, oh, hey, there's one of our properties. So it's kind of fun to see that too.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, well, that's the benefit number one of living in California too. So, hey, you gotta love it, It's
Yeah.
always in demand out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, Joshua, how do you balance raising a family, running your portfolio, and maintaining transparency with your audience?
That is the big question. The family, this is a lot easier to do when you don't have a family, when you don't have kids. If it's just you and your wife and you throw kids into the mix and it's a whole different ball game. We've done these renovations. The last one that we did with the family living, the whole family, and we've got 4 kids. My oldest is 5. So 4 kids, 5 and under. We got a 5-month-old and a 5-year-old, and they're all in between. It's difficult. I will say it's difficult. The weekends when we're doing a property and I'm doing a lot of work on it, my weekends, because I have a day job. I got a company that I own and run during the week. So all this gets done on the weekends. And so I'm working on the house all the weekend. My wife's got all 4 kids and trying to keep them entertained. And so it's definitely not easy. I will say it's not an easy path that we've chose to go down, but it's doable. You can make it work. I think a lot of people think that you can't do all this stuff when you have little ones and so they end up putting this off, like whatever it may be, whether it's starting a business or buying a property, doing renovations, rental, whatever. People put it off when they have kids because it is hard. It's I'm not going to say it's easy. It is a lot of work. But I think we're living proof that you can do it, you can make it work, and you can start building that wealth snowball now rather than putting it off for 10, 12 years. The sooner you get started, that snowball just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you got more properties or your business grows or whatever it is. So I think just going for it and doing it's kind of been our testament to our success.
All right. Well, Joshua, it has been a blast having you as our guest today. As we close out, please tell my listeners where we can learn more about you, get in touch with you, and learn about all the fabulous things you have going on right now.
Yeah, so we have my wife and I have a podcast. It's The Broke Millionaires. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast, we're there. So you can check that out. And then probably Instagram at The Broke Millionaires is probably the best way to get a hold of us, or I should say at The Broke Millionaires _. Yeah, and then we're gonna be launching a community in January where we're helping families kind of go through with our experiences and all of our experience that we've gone through. We're going to be launching a community to kind of help people, walk people through that and show them what they can do while you're raising a family.
All right. We love it. Awesome, Joshua. Again, I want to thank you for your time today and all the wisdom you have provided to my listeners. It's greatly appreciated. And I want to thank you, our fans, for tuning into the Syndication Real Estate Podcast, where we want to add value to you and your investing business. Please tune in to our next episode where we will interview another fantastic investing professional. See you next time. Thanks for listening to the Service to Syndication Podcast. We want you to know that we love and appreciate your support, and we are grateful about being a part of your journey to becoming a successful real estate entrepreneur. Please share this episode with a friend who you think will get a lot out of what you just heard. Send it to someone who you know is interested in real estate and dreams of having it all and being the best they can be in all areas of life. And if this was really valuable, share it on your social media stories and timelines. Thank you for watching and listening. Now go be great.